Welcome to Triumphant Thursdays on Tea Time with Afternoon Social. Every Thursday, we talk to ladies who share their stories of achieving amazing things, big and small. They have overcome challenges, defied the odds, and made their dreams come true. Grab your favorite cup of brew and join us as we lift each other up and inspire each other to reach for the stars.
Good afternoon and welcome to Tea Time with Afternoon Social. I'm Teresa Lauterbach, your host, and today we have another fabulous guest. Her name is Dr. Jen Harrison. She's a dissertation coach. She has coached and supervised first generation ESL and non-traditional students in the UK and the United States for over 10 years. She offers support in writing and research design and research methods, and she specializes in helping people with their dissertation and their career goals. So how are you today, Jen?
I'm very well, thank you. I'm excited to be on the podcast.
Thank you. She, like she just said, she likes to call Dr. Jen. Our students call her Dr. Jen. But today on Triumphant Thursdays, we're going to talk about Against the Grain and how she went from an academic to an entrepreneur. So I'm going to kind of turn it over to you and let you explain your journey of how you've gone from one to the other.
Sure. So I did my degrees, both of them, the bachelor's and the PhD, when I was in the UK. So I went back to the UK for college. I did my undergraduate degree. I went straight into a doctorate degree. When I was doing my doctorate degree, I did what most doctoral students do, and I taught as well at the university. And I realized that this was something that I loved doing and that I wanted to keep doing. But like most doctoral students, I also needed a job when I finished. So
Right.
I ended up moving away from where I had been living, and I didn't end up going straight into being a professor at that point. Instead, I had some kids and I did a teaching degree. And I was a classroom teacher teaching high school students for a while in the UK. And then my kids got a bit too big for the teeny tiny house that we were living in. And my husband desperately wanted to come to the US. He'd heard there was good hunting here. So we all picked up and moved back over here where my family were. And at that point, that was when I started teaching in higher education again. I was at my local state college, and I stayed there until the pandemic hit. And what I realized during the pandemic was that there were a lot of students who were struggling with the switch to online learning. They were struggling just generally with a lack of support, and completion rates were low, retention rates were low. And I realized that I had a set of skills that could help them that not a lot of other people did, because I had had experience both as an academic, but also I was a trained teacher. And a lot of academics are not trained teachers. They're not trained educators. They don't know how to help people. They know their subject matter.
Right.
And so when I realized that, I decided that I would move out of higher education and I was going to be a dissertation coach. And I took some very specific training. I was already an academic editor because I'd worked on a couple of journals as well. And I kind of took that. I took some training as a coach, put the two things together and started the business. And I've been doing that ever since.
Well, that's cool. So it's all virtual, or do you do something in person?
It's completely virtual. The reason being my college town is quite small, whereas there's a lot of universities across the United States and a lot of students who are struggling. So virtual means that anybody can get the help that they need.
Right. So what's one of your biggest challenges for starting a coaching business?
I think the biggest challenge for me was knowing nothing about business. I knew a lot about how to edit a dissertation and what a good academic article should look like, and how to manage a classroom. I had no idea how to market. I didn't know how to identify an audience. I didn't know, how do you actually reach out to people and tell them that you exist and that you can help them. So that was definitely the biggest challenge for me, and I think it's probably still the biggest challenge. That this is a very steep learning curve.
Right. Plus finding all of your clients, right?
Yes. And I did try to go it alone for about a year, thinking I can probably figure this out, reading blogs and, listening to podcasts. I'll get there on my own. And actually the conclusion I came to was, nope, I need to hire a professional and someone who could actually tell me what to do. And I hired a coach, and I went through about 3 coaches before I found one who was genuinely helpful and knew his stuff. And I've been working with him ever since. And so he straightened me out and showed me what to do.
Yeah, that's one thing I've found with a lot of my guests, that they started with another coach, even though they're coaches themselves now.
Yes. Yeah. And funny because, going into dissertation coaching, you'd think I'd be a very coach positive person. But when I started, I was very much of the mentality, like, you don't hire people to help you. You figure stuff out on your own. That's what you do. I think that's a very academic mindset. I see it a lot with the students that I work with as well. And it took me a long time to overcome that resistance to asking for help and admitting I needed somebody to support me.
Right. You needed a teacher to teach the teacher.
Indeed.
So, and then you had the challenge also of moving across from the UK to the United States too.
Yes, it's funny. It was a very impulsive move. I think we had planned a visit to my parents for Christmas, and around November we decided we were going to move permanently. And so in about a month and a half, we completely packed up our lives over there, sold all our possessions, paid off all our debts, like arranged flights, and quit our jobs. And so by the time we came over for December, we were ready to stay here. My husband did have to go back in the end. He had to work out a few more weeks in his previous job, and then he joined us in the January. But it was a very, very quick move with 2 children who were both under 2 years old.
Oh my.
Yeah, it was quite something, but it was a worthwhile move.
Right. So how soon after you moved did you start your business?
So we moved over here in 2016. I think that's right. In 2016. So I worked at our state college for very close to 5 years. I think it was 4.5 years before I finally started the business. And like I said, it was that push from COVID when I just saw how many students were struggling. And, the working in higher education was starting to feel much more uncertain at that point as well. And so it seemed like the right time to pivot.
Yeah, because with COVID, all the universities shut down, everything shut down, and
they all went virtual. Yeah. And so a lot of people were still teaching virtually, but I was seeing professors and other instructors didn't really know how to teach virtually, and they hadn't had any training in that. The students didn't really know how to learn virtually. They were struggling. There was a lot of people dropping out, a lot of people struggling with the mental health things. So that ended up being, I was seeing from both sides of, I know how to help all of you. You haven't got, you need the training.
Right.
You need to have been trained in this stuff. You can't just wing it.
Right, because when you get trained for being a professor, you're trained as a classroom.
Yes.
Nobody foresaw that we had to go all virtual for that 1.5 years.
Yeah. I think a lot of people who had kids as well realized it when their kids were suddenly having to learn from home, and they realized just how much a teacher in a classroom actually does. Yeah.
But that challenge probably helped you really grow your business, learning to coach over virtually.
I think it definitely grew my client base, but I wasn't necessarily accessing my client base at that time. So what the actual impact on my business was, it's difficult for me to tell. My business didn't really start to grow probably until a year later, when the pandemic had started to quiet down. And I think that was the point at which a lot of students were coming out of that kind of that uncertainty phase and really being galvanized to do something. It was like an upheaval, and then this is the point at which they're ready to move on and do something differently or do something new, and that's when a lot of people started reaching out to me.
Oh, that's good. That's good. So, in a way, it kind of helped, but it was like slow help.
It was, yeah. I think that's probably an insight that's worth paying attention to, is that we have these kind of pivotal moments in our society, but the impacts on your business might take a little bit longer as people kind of process what's happening and they go from survival mode into action mode.
Right. So where do you see your business going from here? You're going to do any kind of group coaching type of things, or are you just going to stay with clients? Or
So I am thinking of moving into group coaching a little bit. I'm still thinking about how I want to handle that, because what I don't want to do is, there are a few other big dissertation coaching companies out there, and they are very much on the group and platform model, where you never know which coach you're going to work with. You never know who else is going to be there in the session with you or how much attention you're going to get. What works really well for my clients is that they get the one-on-one attention from me. They've got somebody who knows their work inside out and is kind of there for them every step of the way. And I'm quite worried about losing that. So I'm thinking about how the group coaching model will work.
Yeah. So more basic from a group, but then get into individualized with an individual, the detail.
Certainly something that has started to happen just in the last year or so is that I'm recognizing that my clients very much need support, not just with the actual dissertation, but they need support with wellness and somebody to help them feel good and help them have confidence and remind them to eat and drink and sleep enough and generally take care of them a little bit, because nobody else is doing that. And so I'm finding the business is slipping more into that kind of wellness and support space. And so really a lot of my thought for developing the business is along the lines of how can I support in that way.
Yeah, that would be great, because it is very stressful, and needing somebody to be accountable to finish something as big as a dissertation. I don't know if I could even take on that task myself.
I think most people could, but it's whether they want to. Because like you said, it's hard work, it's stressful. When you really want to do something, you don't mind that. But
Right.
if you don't want to do it, it's hard to make yourself do it.
Right. And in order to get that advanced degree, you have to go through some of those things you may not like to do.
Yes. So I always advise students, like before we even start anything else, like, is this definitely what you want to be doing? Have you thought about this? Like, are you doing this because you don't know what to do next, or are you doing it because you absolutely want this?
Well, okay. Was there anything else, words of wisdom or advice you'd like to leave with our audience today about that transitioning journey and that pivoting?
I think the hardest thing when you're going to pivot like that is the fear of the unknown. And I would say getting some help, like making the decision that you are going to seek help from somebody who can support you through that, is the best thing you can do, both psychologically and practically. So that would be my advice.
Okay, well, thank you so much for that today. And it's going to be interesting to see as you grow in that business and see if there's another journey along your road. Maybe becoming a life coach as well as a dissertation coach, it sounds like.
Maybe.
Okay, well, I think we'll get to see her tomorrow, Friends Day Friday, and we're going to talk some more about actually a different kind of topic, which is multiracial parenting and the challenges of that and ADHD. So we're going to hit on that topic tomorrow. So thank you for joining me on Time for Thursdays, and we will talk to Dr. Jen tomorrow. We'll see you later, Jen.
Bye.